Hi, today we're going to make a grid using the 18-inch rulers that I gave you. Now, these rulers have both inch marks and centimeters. We're going to be using the inch marks, the larger ones. And these are drafting rulers, so remember the first measuring mark isn't the edge of the ruler. There's a little line about 1/8 inch in. So make sure when you're measuring you line up that mark with the edge of the paper. The paper I gave you is 11 inches wide, so make sure the 11-inch mark is right at the edge of the paper. And we're going to start by making a dot right in the middle at 5.5 inches. Now slide the ruler down an inch or so, 2 inches. Make sure that first measuring mark is lined up with the edge of the paper and the 11-inch mark. And again, make a dot at 5.5 inches. Now when you connect these two dots, basically you've created a line that divides the paper in half, a line straight down the middle. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is put a horizontal line across the middle. So line your ruler up along the line you just drew, first measuring mark down at the edge of the paper, and the top measuring mark should read exactly 14 inches. And we're going to make a dot at the 7-inch mark. Now slide your ruler to the side a little bit. Again, make sure the first measuring mark is lined up with the edge of the paper, the 14 measuring mark is lined up, and again a dot at the 7-inch mark. Now when you line up these two dots that you just created, you're creating a horizontal line that again divides the paper exactly in half. Make sure your lines are lined up and draw your line. Use a 4H or a 6H pencil to draw these lines. You don't want to draw them very dark. You don't want to press very hard. Now to draw your columns, line your ruler up so that the 6-inch mark is right in the center, and then make marks every 2 inches. So at the 8-inch mark, the 10-inch mark, the 4-inch mark, the 2-inch mark. Slide your ruler down a little bit. Again, make sure it's lined up in the center, and create a line or a dot every 2 inches. Now when you line these dots up with your ruler, you're basically creating columns that are all equally spaced. We're using 2 inches. Now notice the edge of the paper is not getting wider or thinner at any point. This means you're doing it correctly. Everything is lined up correctly. If you notice that it's not exactly parallel, the ruler is not parallel with the edge of the paper, you may be measuring it wrong. Okay, now we've connected all these dots. We've made columns that go across the paper. Because of the size of the paper we're using, there will be a 1.5-inch column on both sides, and there will be 2-inch columns in the middle. Now line your ruler up so that the 7-inch mark is right in the center, and create dots going up that center line every 2 inches at 9, at 11, and 13. Make dots going down the bottom at 5, at 3, and at 1. Slide the ruler over to another line and do the same thing. Make sure you're going exactly 2 inches apart, starting from that center line up and 2 inches from the center line down. Now when you connect these, make sure again that the ruler is parallel with the top of the paper, and start connecting your lines. This creates a grid of squares that are perfectly square, 2 inches by 2 inches. Remember, you will have a border depending upon the size paper that you're using. The paper that we're using leaves you a border of 1.5 inches on the side and 1 inch on the top and bottom. Our biggest concern is that the squares that we will actually be using for the drawing should be exact squares. So this is what your grid should look. Now we're going to label them. So skip that first little spot and start marking A, B, C, D, E, and F. Going down, we'll skip that spot again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now, if you drew too dark and the lines are too apparent, you don't want them visible in your final drawing. So we're going to take an eraser and try and erase as much of these lines as possible. Now, if this video went too fast, you can watch it again. Remember, you have the ability to pause the video between each step and make sure you're doing it correctly. You can even rewind and replay certain parts until you see exactly what's going on. So when I erase these lines, I don't want to erase them completely. I still want to be able to use the lines. That was the whole point of drawing them. But I don't really want them visible in my final drawing. So remember to always draw very lightly. And then in the end, you can erase a little bit. If you press too hard, the lines will never erase completely. So press lightly, and then just erase a little bit, just so the lines are barely visible. Okay, that's it for drawing a grid. Move on to the next part of this project.